All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming today to the webinar on cold climate heat pumps. We are going to be recording this webinar, so we're going to go ahead and start that recording right now. Matt, do you want to start that recording? My screen shows recording pop. All right. Cool. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to the Cold Climate Heat Pump Consumer Talks. My name is Nikki Malee, and I work at Walking Mountain Science Center. And today, I want to thank all of our sponsors for helping to sponsor this webinar series that we've been doing. So thank you very much to the Colorado Energy Office, CORE, the Community Office for Resource Efficiency, Energy Smart Colorado, Garfield Clean Energy, Holy Cross Energy, and Walking Mountain Science Center. We do have a Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. So if you have questions, please type your question into that Q&A box at any time during any of the webinar. If we can answer those by typing, we certainly will, but otherwise, Dave will have time at the end to answer some questions for you. So please type in those questions. And as I said, we'll be recording the webinar. So after this, within the next few days, we will send out a link to the recording as well as the slides here that you're seeing today. And if you have any questions, again, at any time, put them in Q&A. There's also a chat box. And I'm going to hand it over to Mary Weiner. She's the Energy Efficiency Program Manager at Holy Cross Energy, and she's going to tell us all about our presenter today.
Thanks, Nikki. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all who did a snow salutation. We finally got some much needed snow in Colorado. So hopefully everybody's home and safe and cozy right now. So I want to introduce Dave Petroy. He comes to us with from the Boulder area. So I guess it doesn't matter with Zoom where you're sitting, right? You could be in Indonesia, Dave, really enjoying the tropics.
Or Hawaii.
Or Hawaii, although I guess we can't travel right now. Wait, yeah, we're in a pandemic. So this is why we're doing Zoom, and it's been really successful. So thank you all for joining us. So Dave has 15 plus years experience working in the renewable energy field and sustainability. And he was the founder and president of Blue Valley Energy, which I remember when I lived in Boulder, which is a ground source heat pump design company. So, and then he went into being a sustainability manager. And then he is now currently the founder of NTS Energy. And we're so lucky to have him. He's been doing all of our workshops for us. So welcome, Dave, and we'll let you get us started.
Great. Thank you, Mary and Nikki and all the sponsors. Welcome, everyone. And tonight, we're going to talk about options with heat pumps and gas heating. I have about 30 slides, and it normally takes about 35 minutes to get through them. So give you an idea of how long it'll be. We're going to talk about cold climate heat pumps, how they work, about costs and benefits, mini splits. Going to spend some time on installation and design, making sure you get a good system, how to talk to contractors, indoor air quality, and at the end, we'll put up some stuff about financing. Oh, you know, and also talk about new home construction a bit. So heat pumps are been around a long time. On the left, a heat pump basically has two components: the outdoor unit, which looks just like an air conditioner, and there's two refrigerant lines that go into an indoor unit, which can be an air handler or it can be in conjunction with a furnace. On the right side is what's called mini split technology. Still, it looks different, but the same operation, the outdoor unit, but you can have multiple indoor units, either wall or floor. We'll talk about the details of those a little while, and there's one refrigerant line in and one refrigerant line out for each of those units. So let's talk about how heat pumps work. Heat pumps basically are, reversible air conditioner. And basically they extract heat and they concentrate it and move it, and it's not temperature. So a lot of people feel like, well, how can they possibly work when it's 10 degrees? Well, there's heat in the air to minus 470 Fahrenheit. And so even if you go out at 10 degrees in the evening or in a winter day like today, there's still a lot of heat in there. So how do we concentrate and move the heat? And this is a simplistic diagram of it, but we use refrigerants, and refrigerants are interesting that they have the properties. They love to absorb heat and give up heat. If you put a refrigerant on your stove to boil, it would boil almost instantly compared to water. So let's start here at the bottom of this inside unit. All of this is in the outside unit. The refrigerant starts to leave. It's given up its heat. It's cool. Comes into something called an expansion valve, which basically says it just gives the refrigerant more room to expand. And what happens by expanding refrigerant, actually liquids and everything, when you expand, it allows it to cool off. And the amount of expansion is electronically controlled, depends on the outdoor temperature. But basically it expands it such that the liquid is below the outdoor temperature. So tonight, if it's 5 degrees up in the mountains, this refrigerant might be -20. So what happens then is it goes through the coil in the outdoor unit, and as air is blowing by, it's absorbing heat. Heat flowing from hot to cold, absorbs a lot of heat, comes out of that, and then it goes into the compressor. Now, depending on the time of the year and how much heat it can absorb, tonight it's absorbing a lot less than, say, in the fall. Then we have to compress the refrigerant, and by compressing it, you compress it, squeeze it, and it becomes a warm gas. And basically, when it comes out of here, the temperature is somewhere between 95 and about 110 degrees, and that's what it has to be. It goes into the inside unit in the coil, either in the top of the air handler or the top of the furnace, just like the AC has a coil, and the air blows by and it warms your house. Note that I said that 95 to 105, so you're unlike a furnace, which has much warmer temperature coming out. You're not going to be able to warm your feet on the vents of the heat pump, though 95 is much warmer than 72. So sometimes that's something people aren't aware of, that when they feel the air coming out, it just feels neutral, but that's just the way they operate. Now, let's talk about cold climate heat pumps. Cold climate heat pumps, well, classic heat pumps been around a long time. They've been around since the 1950s, and they were not designed and manufactured to work at outdoor temperatures below 32. And notice this map down here in the left, an old train map in Colorado is completely outside the heat pump area. And so some people who had them in the past, you'll occasionally hear, well, heat pumps don't work in Colorado. Of course, classics don't. But in 2005, I'm going to say around then, it was called the birth of a cold climate heat pump evolution. And a lot of people started to, who worked with heat pumps, said there's really no reason that they can't work in cold climates. Fundamentally, we just have to work on the engineering of them and improve them. And they did that. And since 2010, there's been thousands of units installed. Up here, this is a climate map. Cold New England, the cold upper Midwest, in Canada and Europe. So, and the mini splits came over from Japan, where they had been in a while. So this is not a technology that's not untested or new. It's out there functioning in many very cold regions of the country. So what were some of the technology advances that happened? I just real quickly, so that compressor I talked about, it used to just be on, off, on, off. Now they have multi-stage and variable speed, so it doesn't overdo it. If it's warm, pretty warm out, it doesn't have to be at full speed. There's controls, so the inside unit and the outside unit essentially can talk to each other and match the fan speeds and the compressor speeds and lower the energy use. They've worked on all these coils to make sure when the air blows by, we're getting all the heat out of it we can. And the most important thing probably is frost retarding and defrost operation. So when this starts to frost up, there's controls in a defrost, and I don't have time for the video here. If anybody wants to email me, there's an amazing defrosting video that Sean from Mitsubishi just sent me a couple days ago. And I'm gonna get this on here. Oh, here we go. My floating controls are in the way. So let's talk about some important terms before we get into some more. So tons is obviously not this guy. Tons is heating and cooling tons. And for those, 1 ton is 12,000 BTUs per hour of heat. So that's a unit of how much heat you need to heat something. And most homes are in the range of what we call 3 to 6 tons, 36,000 to 72,000. And when you've all probably dealt with HVAC people before, you know, they'll use these terms frequently. You need a 5 ton, a 4 ton. Now there's a couple key terms, SEER, Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio, or EER. And the range of the current equipment is from 15 to 24. The colder the equipment, the higher the number, the better it is at cooling. Now for heat pumps, they can do both cooling and heating. So we measure the heating side with the heating season performance factor. And I'm gonna, sorry about that, messed up. And the higher number better, and we'll see that on the next couple slides. Coefficient of performance is another way to measure efficiency. You can read about that in the appendix. And the last thing is called D-rating. And you have to size an HVAC system to compensate for high elevation. So this is something that's very important in Colorado. Basically, a unit that's at sea level can perform a certain amount of heating. If you bring it up to Aspen or Vail or Eagle, it has the capability of less heating because the air is thinner, holds less heat. So one of the big improvements, all these improvements in the equipment resulted in efficiency. And this on the left side is the efficiency. Starts 0 up to 14. The higher the number, the better. And on the bottom axis is a year, so about 2012 up to present day. And this is the blue bar is the improvement in efficiency as they kept working on all various components of technology. The yellow is the percent improvement of efficiency. So basically today, we're right in here. Most equipment is between 10.5 and 11.5. All major manufacturers have equipment in that series. The top one is about 13. So that would be a 59% improvement. Typically, you're looking at 34, 35% improvement. And that not only enables them to work better, but that drives the cost of heating down. A second thing that really important in all these technology advancements was the ability to heat at cold temperature with capacity. And the bottom axis on this it's temperature, outdoor temperature. It goes from 0 to 70 degrees. And this is the amount of heating, BTUs per hour, or if you think of tons, this will be 5 tons. The green line is a model home, and it says at 60 degrees, I need hardly any heat energy. And as I go up, I need quite a bit more. These lines represent the evolution of heat pump capacity. So the old classic heat pumps is this bottom blue line, and about 32 degrees is where it put out enough energy, and it basically matched the home. But over the last few years, every time they tweak it, they move up the capacity of the heat pumps at colder temperatures. And this line here is typical for capacity of maybe a ducted system these days. And some of the mini splits hold their capacity very well, all the way out to 5. And then all these can operate, modern day cold climate heat pumps can operate in below 0 very well. So Colorado is somewhat unique. We have 4 cold climate zones. And today, everything we talk about is the models are on Eagle, and it's the high country, and really climate zones 6 and 7s are pretty much the same designing heat pumps. It's just a difference in the summer. On the Eastern Plains, Front Range 4, 5, and Southwest, and over in the West Slope, it's milder. Everything here I mentioned, talk about it, applies to these zones. It's just they're more favorable to heat pumps, so their capabilities are a little more, their costs a little more. And Colorado is unique, and it has 4 cold climate zones. Arizona has 4 zones, a couple warm ones, and California kind of matches Colorado also. Now this is something probably I think most people in Colorado and a lot of cold climates, it's a little bit counterintuitive. So on the bottom is outdoor temperature from -20 to 70 degrees. On the top, on the left side is the percent of annual energy use heating. And so everyone I think would feel that this downwards cold is where we use all of our energy heating, but that's not really the case. Above 35 is about 1/3. And then the middle temperature range from 15 to 35 is half. And notice up to 15 degrees, that's over 80% of all the heating energy. So down in here is 18%. Now, classic heat pumps did the orange. Cold climates easily do this, and they work into here also. Oops, sorry, clicked by accident. And below zero, even up, and this is actually Eagle's data, there's not a lot of percentage way down here where it's very cold. So keep that in mind when we talk about how the heat pumps work. So we're going to talk about some heat pump possible configuration for furnace heated homes. And let's just pretend for now you have a furnace or an AC that goes bad, or both, and you have choices. And normally you would go out and say, well, I'm going to buy a new furnace, or I'm going to buy a new furnace and new AC if I need to do that, or just an AC. Now, what we're talking about here are some other options. You can have a new furnace and a heat pump together. They work as a team. And you can say, well, I'm right now, and you'll see later why, due to the cost of gas being really low and heat pumps super efficient, but electricity a little more relative to gas, I can have them work in team half and half. And then there's levels of rebates, which help with heat pumps. And I can do it this way and say, well, I'm going to use the heat pump as my primary source to heat about 80% of the time, down to say 17 degrees. And then I'm going to just use the furnace for that little last bit. And the other way is, if you want to move away from gas, you can put in a heat pump with electric as the back, and the heat pump's 90%, and it'll use a little electric strip for heating. And when we go through the next few slides, I want you to think about heat pump benefits. And as I mentioned, gas right now is a very, very inexpensive way to heat. And you'll see how it compares with heat pumps. But there's a few things you want to think about. The heat pump, these systems give you control over the next 15 years on how much you heat with each of these kinds of system. And so you have some kind of a cost insurance if prices unexpectedly go one or the other. The other thing today is a lot about, greenhouse gas emissions. And if that's something that's important to you, that's a big part of this shift. So I'm going to talk about costs. We're going to talk about emissions. We're going to talk about kind of heating insurance and how things would change as prices change. So this is a kind of a standard, a house 2,000 to 2,500 square feet up in Eagle. This is a Holy Cross electricity rate. And notice this winter, very low gas rate. We'll talk about that a little more in the next few slides. So
hey, Dave, can I interrupt you a second? We're getting a lot of questions about, you are going to talk about boilers too, not just gas furnaces, right?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, please wait, as he will get into, because I know most of us have boilers here. So,
but what I want, when you think about boilers, the sort of using them in the same kind of mode is similar. Like there's systems of heat pumps that work with boilers. So we'll talk about that, but the same kind of analysis applies. So we've got here a furnace and an air conditioner. Whether you have the air conditioner or not doesn't matter. And this is called a Right Suite. So you build the model in the computer of this house, and you get estimates of how much how much it's going to cost to heat. This first one is 50-50 heat pump and gas. This one's 80 heat pump and 20% gas, and this is all electric. So there's a variation in the cost. But there's other things that need to be considered. And let's look at how this would play out. So you're going to go and replace it. So you have a few choices. I'm going to just buy a furnace, or you could say a boiler. And these prices are kind of, prices vary wildly up in the high country of Colorado. These are sort of what might be median prices. So you can spend $10,000 in a furnace. You can go a furnace if you happen to have air conditioner, not so much up in the high country, but this applies a lot into the other regions of that. Spend around $23,000. You can go with a heat pump and a furnace, a hybrid model, and this is 50-50 heating. And it's just a tiny bit more than an air conditioner. In fact, it doesn't make sense with cold climate heat pumps to really purchase air conditioners anymore, because they're just limited. They just do cooling. They don't really help on a lot of this other stuff. Heat pump with furnace is secondary heating. So this is mostly primarily heat pump, and then a little bit of furnace, and this is all electric. And there's some beautiful rebates up here. And so with heat pump and gas together, you still, if 80-20 rule, 80% use, you get nice rebates, so the price comes down. And this is if you want to switch off of gas. So it's a little bit even less than even the AC combo. So one of the things, there's two things to think about in addition to money. It really depends on, you know, whether this is important to you or not. This bottom is GHG emissions and sort of how much emissions do you put out of your house, and it's surprisingly big, and you'll see compared to cars. So this is, the blue is 2021 in each of these scenarios. So and the left axis is pounds per year, 22,000. You can think of this as like a giant hot air balloon is roughly what these would represent. So the furnace and the furnace with air conditioning are around 23,000. The heat pump right now with the gas furnace is a bit less. And then you go to heat pump, mostly it's a lot less, and then heat pump with a little bit of electrical. So you're saving some now. This difference here is about 5,000 or 20, well, 20%. Compare that to a car, which if you go out and say, I'm going to trade in my gas car for an electric car, it's about 6,700. But notice what happens in just a few years. The gas goes down a little bit because it uses a tiny bit of electricity. The heat pumps drop dramatically. And all of a sudden by 2027, if you're using a heat pump, you're putting out about half of the amount of GHG that you are if you just stick with the gas. And in fact, if you go another 5, so about every 7 years, it's going to half. These things will go down again. Realize, you know, the lifespan of what you're making a decision on is something that's going to last 15 to 20 years. So, well, let's put it in comparison. So if you're concerned about this and you go and replace the furnace over 15 years, you're going to do about 300,000 pounds. If you do it as a hybrid, depending on how much you use, but pretty much it's going to cut it all in half. Heat pump electric, even less. Now, a gas car is this much. An electric car is 30,000. So thinking about spending money, if you go out and buy an electric car and spend $30,000 to $50,000, you save about 120,000. If you go and spend another 10,000, 10 to 15,000 on a heat pump, you're going to save 150 to 170,000. So while an initial look, you might say, well, that's a bit high. If this is important to you, that's how it plays out. Let's look at the second thing, though, in terms of gas and future heating. And no way I have no idea what, and nobody does, what gas is going to do in the future. I mean, the technology evolution in gas has been amazing in terms of finding it and moving it down. Now people, you know, have different views on that, on the gas, but our technology as advancement's been amazing. Now, there's a couple things though. This is today's price right here. The red line is about what the break-even point is for Rocky Mountain Natural Gas, and that's basically from looking at the major companies, and if you read their shareholder reports and do some analysis and look at the industry. So so the models that you just saw were based on this price. So I'm going to show you what if the price goes up to 65, what if it goes up to 75 over the next few years. You know, it might or might not, but things move, very realistic possibilities. So let's see what would happen. You have the gas furnace, and it's going to jump up 1,300, 1,500. AC is the same. Here's the heat pump. So you're going to go from 1,300 with 50/50 to 1,500. So basically a little bit more here, 20 bucks a month, 10 bucks a month, basically even here. Here's where you're using a lot more heat pump and you end up being very close. I mean, it's still here about 150, but it's getting very close. And this is all electric, so it's still a bit more. But the point is, in this range, you have control over how much you want to use the heat pump. I mean, 50/50 is nice if you care and want to cut your GHGs down. If you don't necessarily want to do that much, you can actually move it up and have it almost be the same and use it pretty much except for the real mild times. So you're in control. Now, people asking about gas boilers. So you can get, this is a diagram of a heat pump, an air source heat pump, and it connects in to a domestic hot water tank. So this can be, there's a couple ones use water with some antifreeze in it, and other ones actually use and the refrigerant loops all in here. Other ones run into refrigerant and they have an inside, kind of an inside outside deal. This is a boiler, so you do it together in tandem. You have a tank. The heat pump keeps this warm and feeds the radiant floor. If it gets really cold and needs more juice, the boiler will go into that and supplement it. A few things. This really works well for in-slab, warm boards, staple up systems, etc., where the water temp's around 120, 110 to 120. Unfortunately, high temp baseboard, it really doesn't make sense. You're not going to really cut back much on your energy use from your boiler. You can replace your radiant baseboard with high efficiency radiators. The other thing is there is technology available in Europe and in Asia that probably will be coming here in the next, say, in 2 years. It really just, it's a marketing issue that these can produce higher temperature water. So hopefully for those of you who aren't going to do anything necessarily now, that's going to be an option. One thing though is this isn't something you want to just go out and do quickly. This needs a little more planning and thought. So you really, if your boiler's getting old, you really want to consider planning ahead. If you go to the appendix, I have a list of all the available units now that can do the in-floor and who to contact and talk about what might work for you. If you have a larger home, you might need multiple units. And I'm not going to talk about it today, but if you have a very large home, new home, particularly, occasionally you can retrofit, but you might consider a ground source heat pump. I have some information in the appendix on ground source heat pumps. So let's talk, for those of you also who have boilers or are adding or doing additions, these mini split ductless are a great technology, a lot of applications. This is just repeating the example, outdoor unit, multiple indoor units. And the evolution of these is terms of architecture, aesthetics, flexibility. You got ceiling units, you got wall units, you got floor units. You can even put in little slim ducts in the attic or in the basement and have just vents in there. So the application and the aesthetics are great. And here's some ways people are using them. If you want, you can put it in. Let's say the second floor is such that it's your current system, it's not comfortable. You want cooling, you want to save some emissions. You can take the second floor off of your whole house furnace or your boiler system and run it off the mini splits. Or if the main floor has uncomfortable wings or areas that require more controls, you can certainly add this. Expansions, new additions, extensions. A lot of people are putting rooms over garages. It's good because in this case, you just put a simple unit in and there's no extensions of ducts, or you don't have to upsize your existing system. And one multi-zone system can do, if you want, 4 to 5 rooms and up to about 1,500 square feet up here. So a great technology. Let's talk about, if you want to consider these options and you start calling around and you say, okay, I want to consider heat pump. There's some things here you really need to know and consider. So first thing is the sizing. With furnaces and boilers, a lot of times the history of the industry has been, well, I'll go in, I'll read the label of the old equipment, and if it says 80,000 BTUs, I'll quote 80,000 BTUs and I'm done. Or 120,000 BTU boiler. Historically, we way oversized stuff, which didn't matter so much in the cost of those equipment, but with heat pumps, it makes a little more difference. So you need to do what's called manual J load calculation, and that was those colored images I showed you, the pricing, that all comes out of that. And so you want to know your load first. How much heat do I need? And then the contractor will tell you that, and then they're going to match equipment. So you've seen this before, 0 degrees to 70 degrees. Here's the green line. How much heat do I need? So some contractor will come in and they're not going to do this, but this just illustrates it. This is, an older style heat pump, and it does not have much capacity. This whole section here would have to be done with gas or electric if you go that way. Here's another match, which is actually a little bit better, and not bad, because honestly, remember, if I showed you, we don't use a lot of heating here, so it wouldn't be that bad. This is a nice, very good match here, and this is notice how much the equipment can heat at these lower temperatures. So you have a very little, only a few hours. If you look over here on the right, this is Eagle. This is from the program, and it says, well, in this temperature range, how many hours a year am I doing? And notice below 5 degrees, you only have 30, 11, about 50 hours a year. So you have a few nights a year. Now, I know y'all live up there and might say, Dave, I don't know if that's right, but this is, they put these together, they update them every few years. So it's about a 30-year bit of data. So when you get quotes and you're talking to contractors, you want to ask them, what's the size? Manual J, how much do I need? How did you design? What's the outdoor? What's the load? In other words, how much do I need at these critical temperatures? This is big. Did you derate the system for altitude? Probably 99% of the contractors in the high altitude in Colorado know that, but there occasionally might be one that doesn't understand. You need to make sure the equipment will work, give enough heat out at the altitude, especially, varying. This is 6,700, 78%. What's the heat pump at altitude? What's the minimum outdoor operating temperature equipment? How many years will the system use backup electrical or gas? And mini splits, they have to know to correct both the outdoor and indoor units for altitude. And here's probably the best question. Why is your cold climate heat pump product better than others? All the manufacturers make great products, but you'll learn a lot when they explain what's the nuances and the difference. So if you want to take out a furnace, here's an example, old ductwork, and put in a heat pump, you're going to want them to size it as large as possible, giving the existing ducts. Sometimes the ducts they're kind of small, so that might constrain it. But typically you can ask them, is this duct system good enough? How good is the airflow? The better contractors might say, well, I'm going to rework this up a little bit. It's going to be better airflow, curved, really nice. I might add a couple returns. That's a pretty typical thing. And then if you're going to go to all this effort, will this make my uncomfortable rooms more comfortable? Consider zoning. It's very simple and inexpensive to put zoning in now into these systems. Think about your thermostat. So this will really distinguish various contractors if they've thought about this, and will give you answers to that. Similar on the boiler side, if you contact those folks in the appendix and talk about, okay, what's a heat pump going to do? They'll be able to give you some answers about how much is the heat pump going to contribute, and how are they going to have it work with your current boiler system. One thing you want to consider is good insulation. I don't want to go out and shovel my heat pump out so my house can get heated. The indoor units are super quiet. You don't even notice them. Outdoor units are quieter, but you don't want to put it under a bedroom window. You want to kind of put it on the sunny side. You want to get it out of the snow. Vail, this is a great setup for Vail. 3 feet off the ground, covered, beautiful. This is another unit, a little 12 inches off the ground, covered. This might work for Rifle, except tonight where I guess they're getting a lot of snow. Is it a cold climate heat pump? What's the defrosting? Do they have in the condensate pan? Usually they all have automated heaters, et cetera. And ask for pictures of installations. A quick couple comments on indoor air quality. You're going to redo your system. This is becoming more and more important. People are learning more about it. Also with having to be shut in, especially on the Front Range or the West Slope in the summers due to heat or the fires. And in terms of in your kitchen, gas stoves, they're measuring are really the indoor air quality from a stove in the kitchen. So you can consider the main point of this slide is the evolution of technology. There's induction stove, which many of the top chefs claim are better than gas stoves. And electric stoves, and I can say I just got one myself, they can boil water almost as fast as gas. So the technology, even in stoves, improving. There's a heat pump water heater. That's this unit here. They're wonderful. They basically, compared to an electric water heater, they use 70% electricity. So if you have an electric water heater that's going old, this is a no-brainer. You will save a lot of money. Same with propane. Against gas, it'll save a lot of GHGs. It's so efficient, the cost to operate is about the same. And there's great rebates here. The other thing is plan a little bit ahead. These are not impossible to get. Home Depot and that have them, but it's typically not something that's regularly stocked. Pellet fireplaces are evolving. They're really good. A lot of the materials from Colorado and, well, from the Rocky Mountains. Easy to clean, cleaner in the air. We talk about, putting heat pumps you should always check. There's a lot of gas furnaces, boilers, venting. Is it good? Is it poorly maintained? And just a reminder, just sort of a safety thing. It's winter, check your carbon monoxide sensors. The other thing, aside from indoor air quality, is bringing in air from the outside, fresh air ventilation. And this is the technology advancement over opening the windows. Opening a window still works great, unless it's super hot, super cold out. And these are just little boxes. They're about the size of, they're about 2 feet by 1 feet. Super cold air comes in the winter, flows across the heat exchanger. Warm air comes out a little bit and it mixes. And so you get tempered air coming in your house. You save some energy. You can put one in the attic. So for those of you who have radiant inflow, radiant systems, if you don't have ventilation, you decide you want to for some reasons, you can put this in the attic, you can put it in the basement, and it'll get a little fresh air, but they can easily be added in if you're replacing a furnace system. I've talked about contractors. For heat pumps, there's becoming more and more that are familiar with them, but not everyone is. Talk to friends, look in their websites. They emphasize heat pumps. Have they installed some? Are they certified? Now, the thing about getting quotes, as a contractor in the past, what we're describing here is getting you a far better system. I mean, in terms of how much it's going to cost over the lifespan, what's it going to do for quality, what's it going to do for emissions. There's a lot more to making it right, as opposed to just walking in and saying, I'll swap out a furnace. So I get a couple quotes. I don't go out and get 6. If they're far apart, then get a third one. Be cautious of really low quotes. And it's not reasonable to compare online pricing with contractor bids. And I just a little warning here. And I'm not suggesting if you want to do online, that's fine. It's just that this is a long-term sophisticated equipment. If you purchase it locally through a contractor, you've got this pyramid of people standing by and supporting the warranty and also equipment replacement, like parts. You do an online purchase, I just would be super careful, like read who actually has the warranty. I've noticed that some of the online retailers, the big manufacturer isn't necessarily the one holding the warranty. It's some online distributor who might be around for a while, might not have parts, and contractors are, they're not as supported. So just be cognizant of that. Finishing up real quick, a new home, HVAC overview. Same homes can have different heating loads. We love to have high ceilings. We like more glass, ups the heating load, but we insulate better. We have less air leaking. My recommendation is getting heating load early in your building process. Ask your builder, hey, how can I get a heating load? Ask the contractor, because once you know that, now you can start thinking about your options. And that's the real point of this whole presentation is now with technology, we have a lot more options, and it's just get people to present you with the options. And so heating and cooling. And I'm not going to run through, you can read it because we're running short on time. The standard natural gas and AC. So there's capital cost, GHG, lifespan. There's heat pump natural gas, heat pump electric, geothermal for larger homes. And distribution system, I just need to make a couple comments on that. radiant systems have been considered the absolute best standard of comfort, and they still are. They're still fantastic, but they require independent filtering, ventilation, and cooling systems. So if you're thinking of a new home, you got these systems to also install. Now, the thing about it, air systems are vastly improved and I'm going to say rival radiant systems. And the reason is air used to be really noisy, used to blow like crazy, one thermostat in the house, people would say dusty, etc. Now they're really quiet. You can zone them. You can have filtering in and with them. You can have comfort into all areas. In fact, geothermal, or not geothermal, heat pumps, the idea is they run a little longer cycle and just gentle amounts of air all the time. And you can add a lot more indoor air quality. So just the point is, don't necessarily assume that there's a big gap in comfort and quality in these anymore. Air systems are kind of caught up. Heat pump systems always include cooling. AC units are really an obsolete technology for homes in Colorado climates. The pricing between a heat pump and an AC unit is typically heat pump might be $1,000 more or so, but many utilities, the rebates are more than make up for it. And as I explained, with AC unit, you can only do one thing. With heat pumps, you can have it work in tandem. It can help you amount of emissions. It can help with future costs. Electric floor radiant can be selectively used with air systems. So, if you want some radiant floor comfort, you can, I'm not going to go through this because we've been running at long and you can read this, but hopefully you get the idea. The idea is they work great in Colorado. They're a good choice. There's something to really consider as you go forward, and some thoughts on working with your contractor. The appendix has tons of information about different things. So I would just quickly go to that and show you lots of stuff. And I'll turn it over to, I think, Nikki to talk about, or some financing options, talk about incentives. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Quickly, we want to make sure there's time for some questions. So I just wanted to point out on this slide, it's a good one for you to reference later. These are your local contacts for incentives for this heat pump technology. So Holy Cross Energy, you're a local electricity provider. If you are changing from natural gas to an electric heat pump, they potentially have for you $850 per ton available for an incentive. Here at Walking Mountain Science Center, we are Eagle County from Vail to Dots Arrow. We have for homes up to $3,000 available, and for businesses up to $6,000 available. Garfield Clean Energy, or Clear, out of Garfield County, there's several different options there. Commercial, there's $1,500 available, and for residential, there's $1,000, and then commercial from Glenwood Springs Electric up to $5,000. And then Core over in Pitkin County and Eagle County area that's in the Roaring Fork Valley, they do have up to $2,500 available for heat pumps. So don't forget about your local resources for help as far as incentives. And there is a contact page as well that you will be able to reference to get the contacts for all of these local incentives. Dave, are you ready for some questions?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Dave, and everybody. Thanks for staying with us. That was really great. So in a dry climate such as ours, is frosting as big of the problem as, say, North Carolina?
Well, relatively, it's still a problem up here. It's hard to say, but I mean, we're still going to get frost in the heat pumps and the frost cycles. In fact, it's probably a bit more than North Carolina. If you're going to compare it to Maine, maybe moist Maine, maybe a little bit less, but it's still something. And the technology works fantastic. If anybody wants to see one of these things defrost, email me. I'll send you the video.
Right. And there is a condensation line that you do put in with a heat pump. And so it is all about the installation of them. It has to be correct in our cold climate. So are all mini splits heat pumps? Are all mini splits heat pump systems, or are some conventional AC furnace heat? We'll stop at that one and then I'll ask the next one. I think I understand it.
No, they're not. No, there's heat pumps that look like just, that work just like a furnace with an air handler for the whole ducted system. And then mini splits is a separate category. So, so
there's air source and air to water heat pumps. And then there's ground source heat pumps.
Yeah, let me just really quickly. So What we're talking about is an air source heat pump, and the air source heat pump can provide to an air unit. Mini split provides to like these indoor units. The other one, which I talked about going with boilers, is called an air to water. And what that does is takes the heat from the air and makes warm water. And that's for radiant floor with the boiler. Ground source, look at the appendix. You drill holes and you basically use the ground as your heating and cooling source. The most efficient thing on the planet. Costly, but if you're building a big place, fantastic option.
And then can you explain the difference between central air conditioning and heat pump?
So if you actually went and looked at a house with a heat pump versus a central air conditioner and a furnace, you would, like, physically looking at it, you would notice no difference. The outside box would look the same. The inside will look the same. The difference is in the outside box, they have something called a reversing valve. And all it does is reverse the sequence of the flow of the refrigerant. So in the summer, it's like an air conditioner. It takes the heat out of the house, puts it outside. In the winter, though, it reverses inside the refrigerant and brings the heat from the unit back into your house, from the outside inside. So that's why I say to spend money on air conditioners in Colorado at this point with cold climate heat is a waste, because with cold climate heat pumps, you not only cool just the same, but now you have the ability to heat, even if you only heat 10% when it's really warm out. The heat pumps are fantastic at so efficient, even against low gas prices. But then you have over time, if gas goes up, or you say, well, I want to spend another $10 a month instead of coffee. I want to cut down on my greenhouse gas emissions. I'll do that. As Holy Cross gets greener with electricity, you could do more green. So you have a tool that you can do lots of, really control what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. And I would say the big difference between, especially being the electric company, central air conditioning is expensive. It will make your summer electric bill higher than a heat pump. A heat pump uses a fraction of the electricity. It's that much more efficient.
Dave, I think your comments on the last question lead into this other question really well. In Colorado, electric generation is about 44% coal and 30% gas. What are you using for GHG calcs on electric heat?
Right now, the GHG calcs I'm using are based on Holy Cross's mix in their last report, which was like 1.1 pounds per kWh. And when 2027, I was pretty conservative. I think I said they go to 70% renewables. And so it goes down to like 0.67, I believe was the number. But in fact, their goals are even more ambitious. So trying to be conservative, but those bars in terms of emissions for electricity could go down even further.
Mary, do you want to add to that about Holy Cross's mix?
Yeah, so those of you that are Holy Cross members, we are currently 44% renewable. Anybody can help us get to that 100%. We have the Pure program, and for a small fee every month, you can offset your usage with 100%. So you would cover 56% as we're 44%. And as we add more renewables to the grid, that fee goes down, and then we're on this 100% renewable by 2030 journey, and we all want you to help us get there. So the Pure program really does help us.
And I'll add, because Neil typed this in, that Tri-State has a goal of reducing GHG emissions to 60% by 2030. So Tri-State is another provider in Colorado. And
Excel is 80. So, every utility now in Colorado is on a really steep glide path. Right. So I try to be conservative about those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave, can you clarify the cost of the heat pump with furnace? When you talked about that, you had it at about $25,000. Is that assuming the existing furnace is still working, so we are not buying a new furnace?
That was assuming a total replacement. So with an existing furnace, you can add a heat pump. You'll want to talk to your contractor a bit more about it. You'll probably want to keep with the same manufacturer. And the tricky part will be how well the old furnace can talk to the new heat pump. So if the furnace is new enough and the communication is really good, then all this, remember I said one of the way they got the efficiency up was how efficiently they talk. It doesn't mean that you can't retrofit a new heat pump to an old furnace. It just might be that the efficiency isn't quite as good because they don't talk as well. And there are certain brands, particularly Bosch, which has the ability to kind of work with a lot of different furnaces, and it does something through rather than through like through refrigerant pressures rather than talking electronically. So it definitely works. You just have to be more cognizant of what you're getting into.
And can I add, what we're seeing mainly, what people are doing is think about when your boiler or your furnace is going to be end of life, like in the next 5 years. So what we're seeing with the furnace is there is a Bosch or a Mitsubishi, and they actually replace the whole furnace with the heat pump with an electric resistant backup in the air handler. And those are doing really well.
So you have those. And I just, while we're talking, we can do more questions. I just want to show you what's in here. And for those of you, I know a lot of you have boilers. Go to this here. Go to this page. These are manufacturers of the air to water that work with boilers. And I would highly recommend, if you're really interested in this, contact one of these folks down in the bottom here. Hans does a lot of these up that way, and he's a good designer, but I would recommend calling and just chatting with them and saying, what's the possibility ahead of time.
That is great, Neil. I'm sorry, I'm reading Neil's question. Sorry, Dave. Another question from Neil. So with a heat pump technology, and he's asking about new homes, either air source or ground source, we are generally talking forced air system rather than radiant, correct? And can you supplement with a little electric radiant in a few areas?
Yeah, the way I think of a new home, if it's a 2-story, I kind of think of it as 2 homes. And one way really nice is, these mini splits are awesome in terms of a second floor because you can put little ducts up in the attic. Very, easier to install. And then electric, you can use in the bathrooms. Typically you use in the bathrooms, and you might use in the kitchen, and you can they have automatic timers on. So the idea is, for the bathrooms, you set the timer for an hour in the morning or an hour at night, and it just warms the floor. So there's a very important distinction. It's not really necessarily warming the whole room. It's warming the floor. And you don't even have to have the electric in the whole bathroom. You just have to put like a 2-foot strip in front of it. Same with the kitchen. So that's a nice combo. If you still like the benefits of radiant, but overall the cost effectiveness of air and all the indoor quality and stuff, you can combine them together. The other thing is, you can do first floor radiant, second floor heat pumps, etc. There's all these combinations depending on what's most important to you. I would recommend, and I have in the appendix again, if you go down to this section here, and this, I have to get the rest of it in for gas options, but sort of you put propane. This is if you're building a new home and you don't have gas options and connection, it's really expensive. Here's a set of options. Here's the things to think about for up to 2,500 and larger. So you get ideas of cost and et cetera. And I'm going to be putting one of these together with gas options, with gas options too. So if you're building a new home and have that and you want it, just email me, and when I get it done, I can send it out to you.
So Dave, it sounds like from kind of how you've answered that question and some of your other comments, we need to have you clarify more how big of a space a heat pump can actually heat, right? One of the questions we have here is, can a zoned system serve 2 nearby but separate buildings?
No. Well, okay, nearby. I guess, let's say if you had 2 townhomes with the same wall, so you could put one system outside and have one unit inside. In the commercial buildings, they'll have one unit and can do 8 rooms.
And she says that they're 25 feet apart.
No. In fact, it wouldn't.
It'd be expensive to do that.
Yeah, surprisingly, 2 little units would be almost as cost effective, because what you'd have to do is dig a trench, insulate the refrigerant lines, et cetera. So you would be surprised that probably doing 2 little units would be more cost effective and really work. I wouldn't recommend that.
And one last question we have here. So please, if anybody else has any more questions, feel free to type them in. We have a few more minutes. This person has a large solar system, so low electric power costs with gas radiant heating and central air electric powered. What would be the payoff if we used a heat pump system?
How did it say how big the house was, or you said a large house?
Does not say how big the house is.
Okay.
Richard, if you're still on, you can give us some more information.
So Richard, what you could do there is the cooling system. You can replace the AC with a heat pump. And then you can use the heat pump and the air system to do a lot of the house heating during the milder times. And what you can do then is turn the radiant floor system down, and it becomes a floor warming system, not a house heating system, which actually will save a lot of cost on that side of it. So in essence, now you're using the air to do a lot of the heating, and then there'll be some, the contractor could actually put in some outdoor changeover temperature. So that's what I would recommend in that. The other strategy would be to, you could actually put an air to water heat pump in conjunction with your boiler. But the fact that you've got the ducts and the air system gives you a couple of options to evaluate. If you want to write me a little more details, I can give you some more detailed advice.
Okay.
And Richard, I have allowed you to talk, so you can unmute yourself. But first, I want to tell everybody thank you for coming. It is 6:30. We understand if you are leaving the webinar, but welcome to stay on and listen to some more answers.
Okay. Yeah,
Go ahead, Richard.
I'm about 3,000 square foot.
Okay.
And the AC system is really just set up, for hot. It's in Glenwood. On those hot summer days, it cools things down, and it's basically set up on the upstairs part.
Okay.
And it does have it has the boiler system with a little hot water heater for the boiler.
Mm-hmm.
And then also it has a supplemental AC 200 volt to 20 volt electric hot water heater. So,
okay.
So it's kind of a mixed system right now.
So the simple thing is you can take when you're ready to replace the water heater, just take that off and make that a heat pump water heater. Okay. Save a lot there. That's the most easy thing to do. So the question is, how important is it for you to have radiant floors in your second floor? If it's not really critical, you could actually replace the AC unit for the second floor and make the second floor a complete heat pump system. And you could have the plumber basically turn off the zones for the second floor. So now you've sort of moved half your house to electric with a heat pump scenario. Of course, you can always still run the zones, but just run them really at a much lower temperature. Like rather than 120 in the winter, you just run them at 75, just keep the floor warm. The other option would be to talk to someone on that sheet and about combining a air to water heat pump with your boiler system. But I would really recommend the first strategy, because air to air heat pumps are a little more efficient than air to waters. So you got a couple options to investigate.
So the first strategy was to get a heat pump for the AC system.
Correct.
And then possibly look at a heat pump for the hot water heater, especially if we're replacing it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So you're talking about the mini split system. So the upstairs, which gets hot, where you do more of the cooling, it's what Dave was explaining, the mini split system.
No,
you
well,
have-
I think Richard has, right now you have a normal AC with ducts for the second floor. Is that
Do you have
correct? Richard?
ductwork?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
then
what
you
he
could
would
do,
do would
yeah.
just be to switch out
right.
that AC for a
Right.
heat pump.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, you could just get a better, it's really just gonna get a more efficient AC compressor unit type thing.
Yeah,
Well,
but
you
make
get,
it
yeah,
a heat
but
pump.
you get heating too. So Richard, do you bank any kilowatt hours with that solar system?
Yes,
or-
I did, and I did get a nice $1,500 rebate, and I actually got a check from Excel in the
from
summer.
So do you get your
Excel,
electricity from Excel or Holy Cross?
Holy Cross, I think.
So
No,
why did you?
no, in
yeah.
Glenwood, it's from the Glenwood Electric.
Yeah,
Power plant.
it's Glenwood, if you're up 4 Mile, like Oak Meadows, you would be in the Holy Cross, our territory.
Right,
But if you're in city of Glenwood, you're on the city of Glenwood municipality.
yeah, which is kind of
So-
an interesting thing, yeah.
So Richard, the one thing that's important is whoever looks at your second floor does a load calc for the heating, because the heating is probably going to be a bit higher load than the cooling. So
Right.
what's really important is, like, the cooling might be a 2-ton load, but the heating for the second floor might be a 3-ton load.
Yeah,
So you just want to be, and I don't know what rebates there are for heat pumps up your way, but
Glenwood.
it's likely that you would end up spending less putting a heat pump in than just a new air conditioner.
yeah. I think the thing that I'd like to do for the clean air part of it too is get that thing so it just circulates air at times with one of those ionizing purifiers.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. How old is your system? Your air conditioner system?
The air I don't know, it's retrofit. It's probably 10 years old.
Okay, so you probably can make a pretty big jump in efficiency.
Yeah.
Well, and heat pumps do have filters too. So you could look at that too. So that's why they give you a little better indoor air quality, and you're getting rid of the gas too.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's an interesting thing with the existing radiant heat and COVID. You're kind of looking at, sure don't want to get a group in this room, in this house. Yeah.
mhm. Right. Yeah.
Unless you want to open all the windows when anybody comes in. But yeah, we're gonna have to work on that. Okay.
Sure.
Mhm.
Be happy. Write me an email if you got more questions. Is there any
All right.
other questions, Nikki?
There's no more questions.
No
Richard,
questions.
I also encourage you to reach out to Clear and Garfield Clean Energy and see how they can help you as well.
Yeah. Where is that? Put that up.
There
And
she
we
is.
also had an earlier question, because some people in Carbondale, and even going down to Rifle and that have Xcel Energy, and they are starting to offer rebates for heat pumps. So every utility company has rebates on their websites. So go visit every websites to learn about our rebates. And we also, I know Nikki and everybody has a contractor list too. We're happy to review bids for you. So we want you to install heat pumps, but let's do them right.
Yeah, and so as far as I know, I believe Xcel is going to have cold climate heat pump rebates coming up this year. I don't know exact, but I think
It is out there. It's $300. I just Googled it. Yeah.
No,
So
they have a new plan coming out for 2021.
DSM plan. Yep.
And it's going to be it's going to be a bit better. I don't really know exactly how much, but so that could be helpful to some people in Xcel territory.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave's email is at the bottom of this contact list here, as is all the other emails for your local nonprofits that can help you, as well as Mary's email there on top. So please reach out to any of us with any further questions, if we can clarify anything. Looks like a couple just came in.
Yeah,
Let's
one
see.
just came in. So are there any heat pump hot water heater mini split combination systems? Brand name.
In
Not
Europe,
Not
Europe
that
there
I'm aware
are,
of.
but not in the U.S. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Europe has been ahead of us in Japan. I mean, even South America.
I mean, I would just keep it simple. The heat pump water heaters is like a nice, especially if you're on electric or propane, a nice clean switch out. Even with gas, it's a nice clean switch out. The difference is gas, it sort of operate break even at the moment. Propane are all electric. If you switch it out, like if you switch out an electric hot water heater for a heat pump, you cut your water heating bill by 60 to 70%.
Mhm. Right.
Is there another last question or?
Great. No, I think
Nope,
that's
that's
it.
it.
Everyone that's still on, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. Thank you so much for
Right.
attending. We will be giving this webinar as well on Saturday, the same subject matter, focused on natural gas customers switching to electric heat pumps. So if you'd like to register again, you're welcome to, or know anybody else that might want to listen, please tell them to register. And we will send a follow-up email out with the recording as well as the slides, and a link about Saturday's registration will be in that email as well.
4 p.m.
Okay.
Saturday.
Yeah, don't forget, Dave.
4 p.m. Saturday, Dave.
I'm not going skiing. I'm on a webinar.
No, you would get stuck in traffic going back to Boulder. So
That's
no.
right. I wouldn't. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
attending.
So thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
we really appreciate it.
That's
Have a
And
great
give us a
evening.
call if we can help you. Mhm.